Hey there, it's Andy Jenkins, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you a quick tour of the features that are inside of WebinarJam. And really what I'd like to do is show you how easy it is to configure and get your webinar running within 3 or 4 minutes. This is done via the configuration dashboard, which is what you're seeing right now, and it's entirely hosted on our secure cloud server. That basically means that you don't have to install anything on your computer or on your website. And you don't have to rely on a WordPress blog, none of that. You simply log into our website backend, configure your webinar, publish it online, and you're good to go. Now, the first step will be to configure the webinar schedule. And here you have 2 options. That means if you want to get a webinar session on the go, you simply go for this first option right here. And the system will automatically open your webinar room, and it will give you the invitation link, which you can then send out to your potential attendees. Now, the other option is, if you want to schedule your webinar for some other time or some other date in the future, you use the second option. And here you can set the webinar session time and date. So let's say that I'm going to schedule my webinar for tomorrow at 1 p.m., and that's going to be Eastern Standard Time. And furthermore, let's say that I want to host also a second session, and I can also make that tomorrow, and I'm going to make that session in the afternoon, let's say at 5 o'clock, also Eastern Time. Now, it might be obvious, but I want to tell you, you can schedule as many sessions as you want for any date and time in the calendar. Needless to say, your users will be able to then select which of the sessions fits their schedule best at the registration page. Now, the next step would be to input the webinar presenter's information into the configuration dashboard, such as your name, email. You can upload an avatar image, a thumbnail, for example, from your hard drive. You can add as many hosts and presenters as you wish in case you want to have a co-presenter with your webinar with someone else. Now, by adding the presenter's information, you'll find the name and their image at the registration page. And this obviously helps you brand your webinar, as well as helping your attendees identify who's the person behind the webinar, and that usually increases registration rates. Let's go ahead and select a template design for your registration page. We've got a number of options. Just simply browse around and select whichever you like best. Let me show them to you in full screen mode so you can have a closer look at what they look like. So you can see there's a number of different styles, different color combinations, and different layouts, and you can have them with video or without video, with text copy, with a headline, without a headline. There are many different combinations at your disposal, and we keep adding on more just as fast as we can design and test them for effectiveness. Now, each of these templates allows you to customize them. You see, there are different sections to each template. For example, the headline, the video player, the social media share buttons, text copy down here, and the registration box. You can customize each of these different elements. So let's say that I like, for example, this design here. I load it into the template. Now all I have to do is type in the information I want to display at the registration page, like the headline or the subheadline. When I want to display a specific video, all I have to do is enter in the URL of the video, and of course you can host that at YouTube or Amazon or even on your own server in the cloud, wherever you want. Here you can decide whether or not you want social media share buttons to be displayed or not, whether or not you want to display your own custom copy at the registration page, and other options as well. And you can also decide whether or not you want subscribers to fill in their phone numbers at the registration box. So you can see configuring a registration page could take less than a minute, and you don't even have to worry about hosting this registration page because we'll do it for you if you want. And this is a free service that we provide to all of our customers. And since we host the webinar pages in the cloud, you can virtually drive unlimited number of attendees into your webinar. 1,000 attendees is no problem. 5,000 attendees? Yeah, sure, this system will handle it. Now let's say that you wanted to create your own custom design, and also you wanted to host it on your own server, on your own domain. Well, that's no problem at all. You can simply select the custom design option, which is right here. You select this option and the system will generate an embed code, and you simply copy and paste that on your website or on your blog or wherever you want. Once that's done, this Join Webinar button will appear on your site, and that integrates with our software. And of course, this button is again customizable. This is just an image, and you can switch out that image for any look and feel that you want when they click on it. The registration box then pops up in their internet browser so they can review the webinar schedule and enter their name, email address, and finally register for the webinar. No, you don't need to install any JavaScript. You don't need to install any plugins. This is about copying and pasting an embed code, and the people will then be able to register right from your website or your blog or your domain or wherever you want and still get on the webinar. Now, of course, after they've registered, they'll end up at a thank you page. And just like the registration page, you can also customize that thank you page. The thank you page is basically a confirmation page that they see upon registering for your webinar. You could display a custom welcome video you want, or alternatively, you can display a text message or perhaps, and smartly, a downloadable free bonus as a token of appreciation for registering for your webinar. It's entirely up to you, and you can customize it any way you want. Here's what the confirmation page looks like by default, with their unique link and logo to the webinar room as well. And as I said before, any welcome video message you might want to display can be put right here. Then they'll be able to set a reminder on their Google or Outlook calendar, and this is a very cool feature. They'll be able to insert their phone number and receive an SMS reminder 15 minutes before the webinar gets going. And in case they forgot that they registered for the webinar or forgot the time, you can notify them straight to their mobile phone so they don't forget to attend the actual live session. And because our webinars are entirely compatible with mobile devices like iPads, iPhones, Android devices, you name it, if they're not home, they'll be able to watch your webinar session right on their mobile device so you can make sure that nobody misses it because they're not in front of a computer. Now, here's a very cool feature which will allow you to charge a registration fee for your webinar. And I don't mean charge a fee for any product or service you may be promoting in the webinar. I mean charge a fee to anyone who wants to register for the webinar. Now, of course, by default, the system sets the registration to free, no cost. But like I said, you can charge a fee. In this case, let's say $27 per seat. And here you simply insert the URL to your payment checkout page. Of course, you can use PayPal or Infusionsoft or ClickBank, your own merchant account. You can use absolutely any payment method of choice. Simply enter that information here, and this will link to the actual checkout page. So once your user lands at the registration page, instead of seeing the standard registration box with the fields to enter their name, email, and register for the webinar. So now, instead of going to a standard registration page, the user will be prompted to go to a page that contains the payment information for the registration fee. And this will then redirect to your payment processing system. Now, once they've completed the payment, the system will automatically redirect them back here at the registration page, but now the name and email fields are unlocked. Now they will see those fields and they can actually register for the webinar because they've completed the transaction. This is obviously a fantastic way of monetizing your webinar sessions. If you want to run straight training or even coaching sessions via your webinar and you want to charge a fee for those services, well, this is a great way to do it. It's also a fantastic way to not only promote your products via webinar sessions, but actually encourage people to pay for the content you deliver in the webinar itself. Now, we all know that webinars are a fantastic way to build your mailing list. Chances are you probably want to subscribe your webinar registrants into your own list or autoresponder, right? Well, that's no problem at all. Right here is an integrations tab. You can simply select your autoresponder company, and we're compatible with all of the big boys: Aweber, GetResponse, iContact, Infusionsoft, MailChimp, One Shopping Cart, you name it. And if it's not on that list, tick the other box and insert the HTML autoresponder code, which you copy and paste straight from your autoresponder company. Paste it in here, and from now on, anyone who registers at your webinar will also be subscribed in the background to your mailing list. Now that you have your webinar configured and ready in the system, it's time to start communicating with your registrants. Chances are you want to let them know about your webinar, obviously, and you want to remind them of their webinar schedule so they don't forget to attend. But more importantly, you want to warm them up and indoctrinate them to the exciting content that they're sure to get on your webinar. And this is the way you do it. What we're going to do is we're going to go right here into the Notifications tab. You have two different types of notifications which you can enable and disable independently. One of them I've already mentioned, and that's the mobile phone notifications. This basically means you can send your registrants a last-minute SMS or pre-recorded phone call 15 minutes before the webinar gets going. So what that means is you can send them a quick SMS reminder so that they can log in right away into the webinar room, or alternatively, and this is very powerful, you can record a voice message in a standard MP3 audio format and then have the system phone call your registrants, and that pre-recorded voice message will play right to their mobile phone. As you would expect, this is a very powerful call to action to get your registrants to actually become attendees. And again, it doesn't matter what device they're accessing the webinar from. So let me show you how to configure a standard email notification sequence via email. Here there are a number of parameters which you can customize. For example, whether or not you want our systems to handle the email sendouts, or you can use your own SMTP server. If you want to keep things simple, just let us handle the whole thing, and that's a load of other things off your mind. Of course, this is a free service that we provide to our customers. So let's get to the meat of this and talk about the most important section for pre-webinar notification and the post-webinar notification system that's built into WebinarJam. So we'll quickly create an email sequence that our registrants will receive both before the webinar takes place and another sequence, which is a whole different set of communications after the webinar has taken place. So we will first activate the pre-webinar sequence. And let's say that I want to create an email that's going to be sent out automatically 48 hours before the webinar. Now, at that point, you probably want to warm them up with some sort of indoctrination series. Of course, you're going to want to give them all kinds of benefits that they'll receive when they attend the webinar session and exactly why they won't want to miss it. So here, we simply enter our subject line, our email copy, and the system automatically adds a unique link here with a button for them to activate. Now let's set another pre-webinar reminder. This time, we're going to send one out 24 hours before the webinar registrants start. Again, we're going to reinforce the importance and the benefits of the webinar and what they'll receive by attending that session. And here would be a good time to give them access to some sort of freemium product, like a free PDF download or a video, or maybe even a checklist that they could use to help them consume the content that you give them during the webinar session. And finally, we recommend that you create a final webinar notification to go out about 1 hour before the webinar takes place. And that call to action lets them know that the webinar is about to get underway and that they need to be ready in order to log on. And of course, it will make sure to include a button that will link right to the webinar room so that they can log on. Now let's move on to the post-webinar notification system. And it works in the same way. The difference is that the emails will be sent out after the webinar session has taken place. For example, we probably want to send out an email 24 hours after the webinar. Here, we want to let users know that they can actually watch the replay version of your live session. You see, the system automatically uses Google's technology to record your live session into a video, and it automatically uploads that video onto the web, onto its own replay page, and from there they can watch it at their convenience. Now here's something that's really powerful. You can segment and target each of these emails to a specific segment of your registrants list depending on a number of variables. For example, you can send this email to those who attended the live version, or you can send this email to those who did not attend the live session. And let's say that you were promoting a product or a service via your webinar. Well, what you can do is you can send an even different email to those who attended and purchased your product. You might want to send those people a welcome email or a thank you email, or you might want to promote an upsell or a downsell or some other one-time offer because you now have their attention as a customer. And of course, because you've set up all of your autoresponder and list configuration earlier, these people are going into your customer list, where you continue to service them and offer them additional offers or cross-sell offers, any other types of products that you think are relevant to them because they made this initial purchase. Now, of course, there's a segment of your list that will attend the webinar but not order the product. Well, of course, you might want to send them yet a different message and remind them about your service or your product, or potentially offer some sort of urgency, scarcity, or bonus for them taking action right now. The bottom line is, you're going to be able to craft and tweak your offers and communications based on the behavior that your registrants took because of the webinar, meaning that you can focus in your message so specifically that you can create amazing conversion simply because you have the right message with the right market. Being able to do this type of hyper-segmentation and communication is really the most advanced strategy to further monetize and maximize the profit of all of your marketing, especially when it comes to live webinars. You see, WebinarJam knows all of these analytics. It keeps track of who attends the webinar, who missed the webinar, who purchases your product, who did not purchase your product and still attended. It keeps track of all the vital statistics you need to know in order to do a sophisticated follow-up campaign. Now, I'm going to show you the detailed advanced tracking system, which is running in the background and keeping track of all of this analytics in real time. Here's the analytics dashboard where you can gather all of the data from your webinar, and it's right at your fingertips. On the left, you'll find the traffic analytics, where you can view how many unique visitors your webinar registration page has had, and how many of those visitors have registered for your webinar, how many of those people attend your webinar to the actual live room, and how many of them then go on and watch the replay video. Of course, you'll get not only the raw data, but also extrapolated analytics like ratios of your sign-up rate and your show-up rate to your live sessions. And here on the right are all of your sales analytics from your webinar. And this data will also include not only how many sales you've generated because of the webinar, but also registration fees that you might charge in order for attendees to access the webinar itself. So right here in this example, I can see that I've sold 42 copies, grossing $7,293, which equals a sales conversion of 11.85%. And now here is earnings per click and earnings per attendee analytics at $8.23 per click and $19.50 per attendee. This is vital information for you to create advertising campaigns, as well as being able to deliver this information to your affiliates and joint venture partners so that they will understand the ROI that they could possibly get by promoting your webinar. Now, of course, you can download all of this data in an Excel spreadsheet. All of the information from the registrants, their name and email and phone number, whether they visited, whether they made it to the live session, whether they watched the replay video, and whether they purchased their product. And if they did, how much money did they spend? All of this information is available to you in its raw data, and it's instantly accessible via the WebinarJam dashboard. Now, let me show you a really cool feature that's going to make your job as a webinar marketer very easy. It's called Pre-Configure Your Pop-In Offers. It's called that because you'll be able to pop in any offer during your live webinar for any product or any service that you're selling or that you want to promote straight to your attendee's internet browser. You see, up until now, whenever you wanted to promote something or pitch something during your webinar, you would have to instruct your attendees to visit some URL like www.your-domain.com/sales_page or something hideous like that. Now, that's a URL that they have to remember, and then they actually have to enter that into an internet browser. And that's cumbersome, and because it's cumbersome, sales will be lost with that kind of mechanism. Well, we've created a way for you to inject that webinar as a live link or button straight into their browser during the webinar session. Here's how it works. So I'm going to enable this option, and I'm going to configure my first pop-in offer, and I'm going to call it My Product. Now this title is going to be Get My Product at an Amazing 50% Discount. Now I can use text, or I can have any kind of image representing my product. I just put that message above the one-time payment of $97, and I want the button to say Add to Cart. And obviously the link to that button should be my actual sales page or my payment checkout page so that the attendee can proceed with the payment right away. Okay, I'll just put in google.com here. Now here we are. Now here's what's cool. I'm going to pre-configure a second offer. And that's just going to be a free download PDF that I might want to give attendees at some point during the webinar. Now I have two pop-in offers, both pre-configured into the system. Let me log into the webinar room so you can see as an administrator what the attendee sees when they're in the webinar. Okay, here we are. I have two internet browsers open on my computer. Here on the left is the webinar live room, and I'm logged in as an administrator, basically as the webinar presenter, here on the right. Okay, the viewing window is black because I'm not broadcasting as an administrator at the moment for the purposes of this video. Now, let me drive your attention to the sidebar. Okay, this section here, because you're going to see how I can pop in from my administration console. Now, from my admin console, I can pop in my offer right to my attendee's internet browser. So as an admin, I would go into this tab here, which reads Pop-ins, and then here I have listed all of the pop-ins that I pre-configured before, basically my product and my free download. Now, at some point during my live session, I want to give my users the opportunity to download that free PDF I was mentioning before. So I click on that option, then I click on the Display Offer button, and take a look at what's going to happen right here as I click on that button. And there it is. It pops up right there in the internet browser, so I don't have to divert their attention from the actual viewing window. And that way, I can also keep people focused on my actual presentation. I don't have to tell them about any long URL, and they don't have to remember it or write it down. And I don't have to force them to open that in another internet browser on the fly. This makes webinar presentations far more fluid by integrating the offers straight into the actual webinar room. It also dramatically increases conversion when it's time for you to make your primary offer. Now, at some point, if I want to remove that offer, I would simply click on this second button and the offer pops out. Now, towards the end of my webinar, if I start pitching my product and I want to pop the offer into my attendee's window, I click on this button and boom, there it is. My attendee will be able to see the offer. This is the headline I wrote before, Get My Product Today at an Amazing 50% Discount. And there's the image thumbnail that I insert into the configuration dashboard, the one-time payment of $97. And of course, the button, which will take them to my sales page. You see how I can pop out and pop in any offer I wish at any time with just the click of the mouse? And that makes the sales pitching experience far more integrated. So the whole thing flows seamlessly without having to take the attention from the attendee away from the actual pitch at any point. As I'm sure you can imagine, yes, this does increase your sales conversion, and as a result, it will increase the revenue from your webinars. While I'm here, how about if I show you all of the different options you'll have as a webinar administrator or a presenter right here in the sidebar. First, let's go to the chat option. And obviously, the first option is whether you want to enable or disable the chat board. Right now, it's enabled so my attendees will be able to type in any message. And obviously, I'll be able to see the messages as well. I can also privately reply to that message, or I can delete it, or if I get some user that's committing shenanigans, I can ban them altogether. Now, of course, if I ban that user, their window will close and they will not be able to log into the webinar room at all. Now, of course, I can disable that chat communication and I can still post my own comments and they'll appear in blue, which designates me as an administrator or other attendees or other presenters as presenters. I can obviously enable or disable private questions directly to me as the webinar administrator. Your user can also choose whether or not they send their messages publicly to the whole chat room or directly and privately to the webinar administrator or one of the presenters. And of course, you can enable and disable that option. Furthermore, you can set any sticky message that will appear and remain right there at the top of the broadcast. So for example, your sticky message could be a welcome message, letting them know how long it will be before the webinar starts or how long you anticipate the webinar is going to continue. You could insert a phone number for a support link or a coupon or discount code that you want them to be able to use when it's time for you to create your offer. And of course, you can remove this at any time during the presentation. In this section here, you can survey your users. For example, you could ask them what is their favorite email provider. You can also add options here. Let's say that you wanted to know if they like Gmail or Hotmail or let's say Yahoo. Now, of course, after the attendees have answered this survey or poll question, I can choose to make these results public during the actual webinar. I can make it live, so as people interact with the questions, the results are displayed, or I can wait until the poll is completed, then display the information automatically. So once they cast their vote, I have a time that the poll ends, and then the information is displayed right to the webinar attendees. Of course, the ability for me or the administrator to interact with individual attendees also exists. So right now, the only two people here are listed are the webinar administrator, which is also the presenter, and the webinar attendee. So I can privately send a message to this attendee. Take a look, and now I'm going to say, hello, and I click on post, and this user receives a private message from the admin. And when it's in red, it designates that it's actually a private message. Now, of course, besides banning users, I can also redirect everybody to a whole new page on their browser. So, for example, at the end of the webinar, I want to redirect everyone to my website or my sales page. So, for example, I'm just going to type in google.com here, and then I'm going to open this URL in a new tab and check go. Well, everybody in this case is going to be redirected. And in this way, you can send them to a new place on the web without closing out the live session in your current webinar. Check this out. I click on the button and bang, google.com appears right here. Of course, I can send them to any website I want, my sales page, another free download, any URL I want to drive their attention to. So let's say CNN. And there we go. CNN opens in their internet browser. You see how cool that is? Again, they don't have to type in anything on their own. They don't have to remember any URL or any sales page or any product URL you might want to promote in your webinar. You're actually directing their attention for them in their own browser. Now that sums up the main features of WebinarJam. And because it's cloud-based software, we can continuously work on new features and roll them out to all of our WebinarJam customers on a regular basis. For some more details about what WebinarJam has to offer you, you'll notice that there's a full brochure of information below this video. So give WebinarJam a try. And remember, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. So for whatever reason, if you don't like the WebinarJam platform or it's just not what you expected, simply send us an email and we'll refund your money right away. Thanks for watching, and we'll be seeing you soon on the other side.